Welcome to Destination Business Freedom, hosted by Pat Mancuso. Join us as we explore success strategies and hacks from leading entrepreneurs, helping you bridge the gap between financial success and personal freedom. Your journey starts here.
Pat Mancuso here. I am the host of the Destination Business Freedom Podcast, and I am excited to have you with us today. On our Destination Business Freedom Podcast, we interview thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and business owners who have exited their business or who are on their way to exiting their business. My goal is to help small to medium-sized business owners close that gap between their finances and their freedom. And what I ultimately know is that we help them to arrive at their destination address. Far too often, business owners get into a business, they have a desire to grow that business, and at some point exit, and many of them never achieve that. So my ultimate goal is to bring talent like we have today, to give you the insight, to give you the strategies, the systems, to be able to make those decisions along that journey so that those decisions aren't being made in silos, but they're actually connected and connected in a way that you get to that destination address as quickly as you can. So before we get started and I introduce this gentleman who I've known for a long time and I'm super excited to have with us today, I want to share with you our sponsor for our session today. This episode is brought to you by the Mancuso Consulting Group, which uses proprietary method called the Mancuso method to help entrepreneurs and business owners dedicated to closing their gap between their finances and their freedom. The Mancuso method was created based upon 30 years of experience by Pat Mancuso in his multiple business ownership, as well as consulting thousands of business owners in their journey. When you go to www.themancuso-method.com, you will take a short assessment, and with that assessment, you're going to receive an itemized report, which will help you clarify where you're at in the journey and how you arrive at that destination address sooner. What it'll also allow you to do is schedule a call with Pat Mancuso, where in that 30 to 45-minute call, he's going to share $10,000 of value with you. And if he doesn't, he will write you a check immediately on the spot for $500, because that's how strongly he believes in the process he's put through. But that's how strongly he believes in the process that he's created to help small to medium-sized business owners achieve that destination. www.themancuso-method.com. So let's get started with our interview today with, first of all, somebody who is truly amazing. I've known this individual for over 30 years. I consider him to be a friend, a mentor, also a business relationship, and I'm really excited about what he's going to share today. So Mr. Marc Cove, welcome to the show.
Pat, thanks for having me.
Oh, man.
Excited to be here, and it's been a pleasure all 30 plus years. You are right. We go back a long time.
Now, seriously, we won't get into that. First, I want you to know I truly met Marc 30 years ago in my real estate journey, and many people know me for that real estate background. But I'm going to share with you Marc's journey, because I've been with Marc for a long time in that journey as a worker, as a business owner, and so we're gonna drill down on his experience today. But I want to share with you his bio. Marc Cove is the Chief Development Officer and shareholder at First Resource Bank. Marc most admires the bank's laser focus on entrepreneurs and its highly skilled professional banking team. He is a seasoned business advisor and commercial business banker with over 30 years of experience in the industry. Marc was one of the founding partners of a Twin Cities-based commercial bank, leading it to over $300 million in assets during his 14-year tenure with the organization. And while Marc's focus is on business strategy and optimizing debt and capital architecture, he has a long-standing reputation in thinking outside the box and creatively customizing solutions for companies and entrepreneurs. Marc graduated from the University of Minnesota with a degree in economics and marketing. While not working with his clients, Marc enjoys spending time with his wife, Carol, and his adult sons, Drew and Daniel. In addition, Marc enjoys spending time with his family, extended family, yard work, and all things Gopher and Wild hockey. Now he says this, and then I'm going to share with you one thing I left out. He says, I love helping turn the economic wheel by rolling up my sleeves and working with the backbone of our community, the small business owner. I love that. A strong banking partnership and financial advocate helps hardworking entrepreneurs turn their proverbial wrench each day. So, Cove, I'm glad to have you here. I learned something today.
Uh-oh.
You have a Harley?
I do. You didn't know that?
Mark, 30 years. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you are a Harley rider.
I would say, am I a hardcore? Do I go to Sturgis?
Do you go to Sturgis?
I do not. That would be a long ride. I enjoy it. And for me, it's the 5:30 at night stress reliever.
I love it.
Come home from the day, you spend 30 minutes, and you've got all of God's treats out there. You've got wind and sun and sounds and all that, and it just blows against you, and it's fabulous. But not
you got the sleeveless leather vest?
No sleeveless, but I do have the Harley gear. Both Carol and I have a closet full of Harley, but it's called the Harley tax. And I had a Honda VTX 1300 before the Harley.
Yeah.
And I owned it since it was new, and I sold it a decade later, and it had 4,700 miles on it. So it shows you how little I rode that. The Harley, I ride more, but I only put about 1,500 miles on a season. So it's not a lot.
All the years that I've known you, I had no idea. Well, so here's what I want to do, Mark. First, we're going to talk about your journey as a business owner. And, I've been able to experience that interaction and, what it looks like to be on the other side of the table. So, of course, I have a lot of bias, but my second part having you here today is our goal in our podcast is to help business owners to exit their businesses, whatever that looks like for them. And what I've discovered in this journey, in certainly my career and my ownership of multiple businesses, is that many times people don't have the advisors around them, number one, the right advisors with the skill level, the knowledge, the expertise, but then those business advisors aren't talking with each other. So what happens is business owners are making decisions each and every day that may or may not be getting them closer to that destination or taking them away from it. And you've got an amazing background that we're going to drill into, because not only are you involved in banking, but you're also involved in the banking industry, not just in production, but in, I'd say activism from the standpoint of really being proactive in the industry. And you're also very active in the political world from the standpoint of the industry. So I love all those pieces. But let me start with this. So you've been in banking for how long?
This will be year 35, I want to say.
Wow. And
so
how did you
started? That was part-time in college. I mean, that was a job to pay the bills, and started on a bank that no longer exists. It was on White Bear Avenue. It was a bank called Mid-America Bank. It was right off of White Bear and right next to Aldrich Arena.
Pretty sure Mid-America is where I got my first mortgage. I don't know.
It would have been, because we had a common friend.
Yep.
Stephanie Scarella.
Stephanie, yep. I remember.
Mid-America Bank at the time. That's where
I met. There you go. That's where it was.
Yep. So it would have been Mid-America Bank. And that was, again, it was to pay the bills. What I loved about banking back then, it's not like it is today totally. It was, I didn't necessarily intend to stay in the craft, but I knew community was important to me. You mentioned the quote about turning the economic wheel. That's what I went to school to do, trying to put facets of community, business, and people together. They don't always all talk. And banking ended up being a natural fit to do what I like to do. And that was somehow combine all three of those elements. And
I love it.
At Mid-America Bank back in the day, you had to know everything. And there was not a lot of computers. We had a few in the building.
Right.
You had to learn every facet of the business. You weren't siloed. And so hard work is what advanced you. And that's, the rest was history, I guess. Never left.
So let's talk about, I want to focus here on your journey as a business owner and then a leader within that organization.
Yep.
So I know a little bit of the story, but give me the short version. You're working at a local bank, and all of a sudden a group of people come together and you're like, you're going to launch a bank. And,
Yeah.
Most people think that, well, that's just like opening a grocery store. It is not. So just how did that come together?
Yeah, it was interesting. I was very happy where I was at the time. I could have retired in my in another. Again, I don't mind mentioning the bank. The bank sold and is gone now, but that was Western Bank of St. Paul. The Sands family really knew how to put together a product. They were the gold standard.
Yep.
And I was blessed to work with that group. I was blessed to work for a bank president, Steve Erdahl, who passed away a little over a year ago now, I think.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
He was an amazing man. And so, part of your journey is not, and you said it about partnerships and exiting. Part of your journey is not about how well you do or the skills you bring. It's about the happenstance of running across people and partnerships. It's that fork in the road theory. It's just by chance I got to work with these great people that somehow had faith in me when I was younger.
Right.
And also let me do what I did, and then and gave me a platform to do it. So in turn, there came that opportunity. All of a sudden, my phone started to ring and said, "Hey, we know you love it. We know you'd retire at Western Bank, but we want to put another bank up." And there was a group of investors that were trying to get a group of insiders to do that. I said no many a time, probably for 2.5 years. I said, I'm comfortable, because
Right.
as you know, the entrepreneurial risk is different than anything else on the planet. You don't get that W-2 paycheck. You have to really dive and say, does this make sense? And the story for me actually comes back to my father, who had, when I was telling him these stories, he mentioned to me, and he was a longtime 3M executive and spent his career at 3M in St. Paul. And he said, the bank's got to love you for leading with your heart. And you are clearly loyal. And some of the traits I loved about myself, I still do. I love that I'm a loyal creature of loyalty.
Right.
I think I wish more people were. I wish more people took time to be loyal, because I think there is a benefit. But he went on about how loyalty to Western and working hard and resisting that. He says, and he had a big but. He says, but one time in your life, you should use that brain. I love you, lead with your heart, but use your brain. That opportunity is only going to come around so often.
I love
that.
it.
Really stuck with me. And it all of a sudden said, why am I sitting here? I did love the bank, but I didn't own it, and
Right.
I wasn't going to own it. And there's only 1 or 2 opportunities I'm going to have in my life to actuate that. And in banking, it's not about an individual. So when you say that, as a business owner, I was one of many. My foray into owning a bank, and I was a shareholder, and I was a meaningful one, but it was a team.
Yeah.
That bank made it because it was a team of people. It was,
sure.
It was 10, 15 really, really, really smart people. And we just got lucky because we built a bank with a lot of smart people. I had the benefit of naming it in my basement. The servers for the company were in my house for a while. I programmed the systems, checking accounts in my dining room. There was stuff that you'd never do, you never realize in the banking space. And there's only been 3 banks in Minnesota since that one, 17, 18 years ago now. So
wait a minute. So the servers that had my information and my money and my accounts were in your basement?
no, it was pre-organization. When we started setting up the bank. No, the federal government has a little issue with that.
I was just gonna say, yeah. Okay,
Before
so
we
I'm
had a building, the servers were in my house then. Yes.
Yeah, that's funny. So I'm going to correct you a little bit, and you won't like it, but you've known me well enough to know that I'm going to do it anyways.
All right.
Yeah, you had 15 other people and you had a team, but you're an owner because at the end of the day, if that bank wasn't making money, you were writing another check. True or false?
True in the early years, yes. I mean,
that's my point.
Yeah, we had to raise capital. Banking is unlike any other business. Banking, you can't get your FDIC plaque. Got one in my office way behind me, and I've got the background on so you can't see it. But the FDIC plaque, you need to have so much capital raised.
Right.
We had to raise a little over $12 million to start that bank. So at that point now but that's all friends. Those investments, a lot of them were friends, longtime clients, coworkers, anybody I could, talk to about putting capital in the bank. That was a very hard sell.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, banks do make money, but it's also an interesting deal, right?
For sure.
So I want to ask you.
We did lose money, just real quick. The first handful of years, we absolutely lost money.
Yeah.
That was part of the model. And that's something else about entrepreneurship, as you know, sometimes in order to get off the ground, you have to lose money. It's not, everything's not roses right out of the gate. You know,
well, I'm sorry, Mark. You know what's interesting about that is what I find is a lot of entrepreneurs starting a business, they don't even know that they're losing money because they're not doing their financials. They're not watching cash flow. They think because they have money in the bank, they're profitable. So, you know, in your realm, you didn't have a choice because you had certain guidelines that you had to meet for requirements for banking and your government related regulations and all that type of stuff. So for you as a, you know, and I'm going to preface everything I'm going to ask you moving forward as an owner / leader. Because you obviously were a shareholder as an owner in the business and a leader. What do you feel was your personal biggest struggle in that role in the bank?
I think my biggest personal struggle was sometimes ignoring what I thought my own opinion of what my ideas were as being the only way to do things. You know, I think what you find in people that and I still struggle with that today. I might have a strong opinion on this is how you get from point A to point B.
Right.
I had a hard time, as often several of my partners did, divorcing my idea for that of a collective idea. Because I wasn't always right. In fact, heck, I was wrong. In fact, I learned more from my mistakes than I've ever learned from my successes.
Right.
And I embrace that. But, you know, so I think as a leader, the hardest part is allowing other people around you to do stuff and lead. And in the case of a bank, it's a co-lead situation. I can't stress enough. That's the way you know, you wouldn't want any one person running a bank. You'd want it done as a team. And there's a hierarchy, but it is still a groupthink process. And we all are better because we all have our own disciplines and put our stuff in there. But I had a hard time adjusting to when the team deviated from what I wanted to do.
Right.
Selfish.
Yeah.
And I think that was some of my biggest struggles, where if I would have just taken a deep breath and say, you know what, this one's not my fight. This one's not my strength. Let somebody else lead it. And I probably would have been even more productive over time. I've done pretty well, and I'm not saying that, but I mean, I think that's a hard lesson for a leader. To learn that sometimes they have employees, and it's okay to have coworkers, peers, even superiors be smarter than you on things.
Right. Yeah,
that's okay.
You need the checks and balances around you.
Yeah.
So what do you think, as in your role again, is the biggest mistake that you've made in your journey?
Boy, that's I actually think everything's happened for a reason. You know.
Right.
I think the biggest mistake I made, was probably getting sometimes too personally engaged with the clients I was serving. And I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
That's not a bad thing.
But at times you have to think like a business leader. You have to think of, I have spent, and I will never regret this, and I still do it to this day, I spend time on things that are not necessarily accretive to my employer that's paying the bill for me to do that work.
Right.
And I think as a business owner, you have to sometimes those weak links at the bottom, you're just better off saying, hey, we just need to, we've done some business, let's move on and focus on the things that could have been more accretive to wealth building.
Well, I remember when you were at your former bank, how, I remember those conversations, right?
Yeah.
And it's okay. And yet here's what I know about you. And the reason that I'm going to kind of go where I'm going to go with this is that you're investing in relationships and people. And that's what you do from my perspective, really well and at a really high level. And so that impact is what people remember.
Yeah.
And whether they do business with you or not, maybe they come in contact with somebody that, could benefit from what you do.
And it's interesting because I think it's instinct. A lot of bankers are able just to kind of stay in the guardrails and do a very good job. They're very smart. But they also learn when to, this battle, this one's just a tough business to fight.
Right.
And I sometimes struggle with learning that 35 years in, because I do value relationships. I love helping people.
Right.
And, but sometimes that leads me to not sleeping at night because I can't help but think about, boy, what could I have done for Pat Mancuso better?
Sure.
Where you can't turn that off.
Yeah, I'll
And
send you the
sometimes
list.
that's where
I'll
it's,
send you the list. No, just kidding.
it's not always a service. Sometimes the Marc Cove way of doing things so customized at times.
Right.
It's also been a hindrance because then when it's time to graduate from that, it's a structure that no other bank would have recognized.
Right.
That,
So
it wouldn't change the thing. But I mean, if you're asking me what's something that I should have done different, or, there should have been 50, 60 times I said, I just can't go down that path this time.
right.
Because I got to
That's not who you are.
Bottom line and other things.
Yeah, that's not who you are.
Yeah.
Give me a mentor or two in your journey that maybe people would recognize their names, and maybe these are mentors that you have a personal relationship with, or a distance mentor that maybe they impacted you through a book or something.
Yeah, I mean that's an easy answer right off the bat. A gentleman by the name of Mark Lumen, he was everything to me in Western Bank.
Yeah.
He took a chance on me when I was 24 years old, and he embodied everything that's good in banking.
Yeah.
Hardworking, gonna go to the end of the earth for their client, gonna make sure that it's buttoned down, that the company's also protected. So I've lived by that motto. He's been gone now 7, 8 years. It's almost hard to believe, but and he was with me on the journey in the ownership of the bank before this one, and there's nobody that made more of an impact to me on life, love, and happiness than Mark Lumen. His name was pretty synonymous in the Twin Cities. So people in the last 25 years, there's a lot of people that worked with him or knew him. He would say this if he was sitting here. Was he the smartest guy? Absolutely not. Was he always right? Absolutely not. But he had humility. He had the ability to be with the people. He knew how to bring the best out of everybody that worked with him or for him. And that to me probably was maybe the single largest impact human being. Then I'd probably say next, if I'm sticking into that space, right? If I'm sticking into the banking space, I could name so many people, but I know I mentioned Steve Earle, the former president of Western Bank. He just from the seat I was in that day, well underneath him on an org chart.
Right.
I just watched and learned how to do business, and he embodied that because he understood both sides. Because banking's unique. You have the we're not nonprofit. We still have to make money.
Right.
We can't exist, and so that means sometimes delivering some hard messages to people you can't always help. And he just did it in such a good way. He was brilliant. And those are probably the two most people in my 35 years. I've run across a lot of people along the way that I'll tell you have been fabulous.
Any people you follow in the world that have impacted you from a personal perspective? Like somebody might say Tony Robbins. Is there anybody that jumps out at you that you really pour into?
I actually really like the Harvey McKay stories.
Oh yeah.
And that's, I'm not a big, I hate to say it, Tony Robbins type guy. I'm not a self-help type of
right.
But Harvey McKay as a business person was fascinating story. Maybe because I got interested in him because he was kind of Minnesotan and he was local and he was here.
Yep.
But he still got 3 or 4 books out. And what I loved about him is it showed that so much was gained by some of the most little moments in companies. And because of that, I think that's been, and I've always been a believer in the Disney model. When we started the former bank, we made sure we very carefully understood that you can't have an empty Pepsi can on your step when you walk in.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter how good your service is once you walk in, nobody's going to not remember subconsciously that empty Pepsi can laying on the ground. If the company's too lazy to pick up trash, how can they help you?
Absolutely. So one last question, and then we're going to transition. So what attracted you to First Resource Bank?
It's interesting because I could have stayed where I like to build things. I realized I was getting a little antsy after almost 15 years.
Yep.
At the prior shop, and even though I founded the company, but also I knew I had And in fact, I'm going to use a Harley story. I was on a Harley ride with a good friend of mine that was a CEO. He's now retired. And every summer we'd go hit a couple bars, just, drinking Cokes, believe it or not. But we would just take a countryside, have a Coca-Cola or an iced tea, whether it's through Victoria or, and we were on this ride. And he, I had known him for almost a decade, and he kept referring to my 3 children. And I didn't correct him because I have 2 kids. You mentioned that at the start.
Yep.
And so I'm like, well, it's kind of weird. I don't know how he doesn't, he should know better than that by now. And I think by the time we hit our 3rd stop, and he said, yeah, you got to be, and hey, let's get back to it. You got to be so proud of how those 3 kids of yours are doing. And so I finally said, well, I got to bring it up now because it's the 3rd time he said it. And his name was Thomas. And Thomas said, I just got to bring it up. I said, I got Drew. He's my oldest. Daniel's my youngest. And he said, I don't have a 3rd. He said, oh, I know. And I said, well, you've been talking about my 3 children. And he says, yeah, he says, you have 2 kids. He says, but you have a 3rd, and it's time to let that 3rd child go. And he wasn't referring to one of my kids.
Right.
He was referring to it that, it was time to move on in life. And when you start a company, and this is what a lot of business owners get, they have an unhealthy relationship with the entity almost as it's a human being.
Yeah. Like it's a mistress in some cases.
Yeah. And I considered, I loved it. I love the people. I still do. I still have a ton of conversations with my old friends at that shop. We didn't leave on bad terms. It was anything but it was time. You know how you just know that it was time for not just me, but it was time for them because I think they could grow better without me. I was probably becoming a little bit of a roadblock to some of the success because sometimes owners just this is how we do it.
Right.
That's why good managers like Ron Gardenhire, right? And he was a great manager for the Twins, but it was his time.
Yeah.
And I still remember to this day walking out of that place for the last time, and I just was telling myself, make it to the car.
Yeah, make it to the car.
Because I saw that my car looked like it was 8 miles away, and it was really 30 feet.
Sure.
And I just thought I was going to pass out and die. It was a painful moment, but it was a needed moment. And so how I got here is, I had known several of the team members here prior, because all of us in the banking space know each other. In fact, quite honestly, we made a play for my managing partner here to come join us at the other bank. And so that's how that kind of happened. We built up a relationship. We had several lunches and breakfast over the years talking about life. And he picked up it was time for me to go.
Yeah.
And so he just turned the table and said, you need to come over here. We'd love to have you. And I was blessed. I had 12 to 13 opportunities. Yeah. But this was one that felt like home. It wasn't where I was going to get the richest. But it was where I could do things the way I like to do them and actually be a valuable member of a collective management team. Yeah. So, and I haven't looked back, and it's just as an FYI, it's 3 years tomorrow. Wow. So
that's crazy.
So I have an anniversary here tomorrow. It seems like time flies, but I know this is my last stop in this business. I'm just pointing out, I've been 35, just do the math. I only have so many years left to do this. I wanted one more ride, and I've been a part of a team that's helped grow this bank, nearly double it since I walked in the door. I'm not taking credit for that. It's, again, a team effort. But when everybody puts their specialties together and their mix of expertise together, it's amazing what you can do. And this bank has a ton of really, really, really good people. That was the biggest thing. Culture.
So I want to transition, Mark. The biggest, I love your story, and obviously I've been with you on this whole journey. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on is I think people really struggle as a small to medium-sized business owner. Sometimes they need capital, and that capital might be to meet payroll, it might be to expand, it might be to buy another operation. There's many reasons people need capital. But they struggle with the process. There's the traditional capital model, then there's the non-traditional capital model. What I've always loved about you and the process, if you may, is that you're not inside the box, you're outside the box, but you're outside the box within the box that you need to be in because, frankly, banking is in a box, right? and there's certain things you can do and certain things you can't do. And so the first thing I want to do before I get started is make sure that people understand, you're in Minnesota, I'm in Minnesota, and first thought what people would be is you're hearing you and go, well, you're in Minnesota, you can't help me in my market. And that's not true, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I mean, it used to be. Banks used to be even regulated for that. If you were sitting in Stillwater, Minnesota, or downtown Minneapolis, or Lino Lakes, or Oakdale, I don't care, you name the community, you
Right.
kind of had your territory was 5 miles plus or minus your door.
Right.
So it was, if you think back to the Andy Griffith days on that show, Mayberry is where they banked. It's where the cafe only got people from that town. That is blown out of the equation.
Yep.
Some banks still choose to be local or stay in states, but
Right.
this one doesn't. If we have, we like to have some connection. I don't necessarily, it's pretty rare some people call me from Colorado just out of the blue and say, hey, help me here.
Right.
That'll give me a little bit of okay, why can't you be helped by the
Sure.
banker that's a little closer?
Sure.
But we have projects in, I don't want to say every state, but probably pretty close. I've got some of my best customers in Dallas, Seattle, Washington,
Right.
lots in Florida. In fact, we're doing a ton of concentrated business in Florida. So
Yep.
I'm flying down there almost every couple of weeks just to meet with some of our existing clients and some new ones.
And so you do commercial, you do business banking, and you do residential, correct?
The bank does. I don't
The bank
touch it.
does. No, I know you don't. I know.
I'm not near smart enough to do anything residential.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm a business banker true and true. So,
But you have resources. My point
we
is
have a team of people that do all those things.
Okay,
And
so
that's
let's talk
also
about
HOA management company that we have a division of the bank called On Point that specializes in nothing but HOA management and association business, and that's been a really good for us too.
So let's talk about from your perspective. So you interact with business owners, entrepreneurs, small to medium-sized companies every day, and
Yep.
you've been doing it for 30 plus years. What do you see from your chair is the biggest challenge that those business owners have?
The biggest challenge is I think, and everybody's so focused on their day to day that they neglect sometimes to realize how important that professional network around them is.
Yep.
And that is when I mean a professional network, I don't mean just having an accountant, just an attorney, or just a banker. The people you need to have on your network are people that don't tell you what you want to hear.
Right.
They tell you what you need to hear. And sometimes, and in a banker, that's tough. I've had people come in here saying, I'd love 2 million for X, X, and X. You know what? This is, in my opinion, I ain't doing it because I think it's the dumbest idea you've had. And
Right.
I mean that in a good way. I mean,
Right.
I
Oh, yeah.
probably say it that negatively, but but those customers of mine that have been with me for 30 years count on that.
Right.
They want that sounding board. They don't want okay, here's how we're going to accommodate you and have the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It's that competent advisors where people aren't using an account just to prepare a financial statement to give to a bank. People
Right.
have an accounting relationship so that information tells them how to manage and run their business.
Yeah. Yeah.
And ultimately, per your starting conversation about exit, everybody should be thinking about exit from the time they start their business till the middle.
Yeah.
You should always be thinking about what this looks like when I have to leave the picture. Because
Right.
I've had people have such good businesses and sell it for zero because there's no value beyond the people that are right front and
Yeah.
center. They
Yeah.
did not take the time to build intrinsic value along the way.
Well, in Mark, it's why we're doing what we're doing at our company because, I think I might have shared this story with you about 2 months ago. It validates almost every day. But about 2 months ago, Diane comes home and the place that she had been getting her hair done for the last 15 years, and I'm sure Carol experiences this as well. Like the hair is a big deal. For you and I, it's not a big deal.
Yep.
But she comes home and she says they're closing the shop, and I went, well, where are you going to go? And she said, well, so and so is going to find another place to go. And I said, well, why is the person closing the shop? And Well, she's 69 years old and she just doesn't want to do it anymore. And I that day there was another story about a $4 million construction company that I heard that closed their doors. And I think about those stories every day and I go, that wasn't their intention to close the doors. That was not their intention for 35 years of running a hair salon to close the doors because you're not either making any money, you don't have a succession plan, or there's no real strategy around that. And so I 100% agree with that, your premise there, that they don't define what that exit is. You literally have to define it. It's no different than, I know you travel to Florida a lot, is I'm going to get in the car and go to Florida. Well, the first thing I do is put in the address I'm going to Florida so that the car can take me there as quick as possible, unless I'm on a, 1 month journey. But if I don't know the address, then I'm making decisions that are either going to take me farther away or closer. And therefore I may never get there. And so yeah, you're absolutely right.
There's a quick story. I have of a gentleman I helped right in about 2007, late 2007, 2008. I won't mention the company. I won't mention the name. He was out to buy a company, met with me, brought all of his financial data in, and really like a sponge. Mark, what do I need to know about banking? What do I need to know about, so we walk through the basics that people blow up on all the time. People will come in, not have their personal financial statements filled out correctly. They don't care. They don't realize that how bad of a look that is when they can't fill out their own statement.
Yeah.
People come in and, I'm not going to guarantee this. Well, then, so what you're telling people is you want the bank to take the risk, but you're not comfortable in the risk of the business. So there's just some clues you can give people to say, here's how to be better prepared to get financing. And this guy came in and just actually soaked it all up. We built a really nice file, everything tied together. And we were thinking we were going to find him a business in about $1 million to $1.5 million range, because that's about the capital he had. Well, he came across a business that was almost $4 million. And it's like, boy, I so liked his approach. He already talked about my plan is to buy it, figure out where I can do verticals and expand, figure out where it's, where I can make it better, and then in a decade sell it. And so we took a chance, because I had a brilliant chief credit officer at the time, Steve Marchek. I'll give him a plug, one of the best people in this business. Just there's nobody brighter. Anyhow, so we figured out this really unique way to help this guy. Literally left 25 grand maybe in his collective checking account. He had let's just say he had $425,000. He put 400 in, had 25 left. That's a bad formula today. You want to, but he was the right guy. So we just did this chance. And 2 or 3 years in, he expanded the business to include a service element that didn't exist, knowing he was going to lose probably for 3 or 4 years from doing that, because it was going to take that long to even break even or make money. Wow. But he knew that if I ever want to sell the company, now I've got a continued ticket, right?
Yep.
If I sell these mugs, it's one and done. Right. But if I sell these lids and these replacement parts, there's maybe some continued business. And so moral of the story, long story short, that business turned, that service piece turned around. He had doubled and tripled the base of that business, bought it for $4 million, put $400,000 in, 11 and a half years later, sold the company for $54.6 million.
Isn't that crazy?
Because he was thinking about that exit and had the right professional team around him from the day one. And everything he did had to have this element. And he turned $400,000 of his personal cash
into $55 million.
Into $55 million.
Yeah.
Now, I did say to him, I said, if you want to really thank the guy that helped you, because he said, we couldn't have done it if you didn't really go out of the box. I said, well, give me half. He didn't do that, though.
No, didn't do that. No. But your point is that you've got to have the address, or at least the general vicinity of the address. And then it allows you to create the roadmap and the decisions along the way.
Yeah.
What do you think the biggest mistake of business owners and entrepreneurs is?
The biggest mistake is not cutting the anchor line on something that's not working like they planned. Sometimes it's such a personal brainchild that failure to them is personal. And you got to be willing to cut. If you have an anchor because you got it in the water, you got this new product. If the signs are that this isn't going to work, cut ties now.
Yeah.
On the flip side, people don't take enough chances sometimes. Not saying monetarily, but again, thinking about what's next. They
Yep.
they might have a great few years, and so they're like just leaning back in their chair, taking it easy. You have to constantly be thinking about tomorrow.
Yeah.
You have to be servicing those that you have today, and you have to be constantly thinking about tomorrow. And again, that's where, my favorite business owners are the ones that I probably hear from every month or two and say, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? And they're having that same conversation with their attorney, their accountant, their
Right.
financial planner. They've circled themselves with a bunch of people that can give them all these tidbits
Yeah.
that'll help them cut that anchor line if something's not working, but also not to fear that failure. You can't recess yourself into, oh my God, I just did this business unit in my company that lost $500,000. You can't do that if you don't have the capital to make that work. But
Right.
sometimes it takes a while to hit pay dirt.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, does, some of the things you're talking about are, where I'm going and what we're doing with some of the things we're doing.
Sure.
I hear you now again. And so that's pretty cool. So, I'm a business owner. So scenario, I'm a business owner and I need capital. Okay. Tell me the 2 or 3 things that I really need to be prepared for if I show up to the bank or your bank or any bank. What are the 2 or 3 things that I really need to be prepared to have to be able to have any chance of having a conversation?
The absolute best thing you can have is just a clear financial package the day you walk in the door. Number one. But I would back that up. The best thing you can possibly do with the bank is to build the relationship with the bank and the banker long before you need them.
I love that.
And people just don't do that. And, because if I know Pat Mancuso for 30 years and you come in with a new idea, I'm likely much more interested, okay, how can I help you get there than if you
Right.
walked off the street and I have to start from scratch. So when people walk off the street, which is fine, usually you got a referral or somebody said, hey, call this guy. He's at least half competent. He knows what he's doing. I love when people walk in with financial statements at foot with each other. They understand they have to give me data, and they do their research ahead of time to know what data they need to provide.
Right.
Oh, I know I'm going to have to give you tax returns. I know I'm going to have to give you a business. And I don't care about a fancy business plan. I tell people they can write it on a napkin. It just has to show that it's got thought and substance to it. So
Sure.
The best thing when people walk into me, or when I say me, I'm going to say any banker would like this, have a really good personal financial statement. You actually probably have copies of your liquid accounts to back it. You might even have a copy of a mortgage statement to back what your house is at. And then you've got your tax returns, and you got it in a format that I don't have to unhermetically seal some sealskin waxed binding because I have to scan. Little things.
Yeah.
And maybe you even have an accountant letter that says, hey, I've reviewed my client's stuff. This is all good. Wow, this person's taken some extra time. And then the business plan to me can be on a Post-it note. Here's what we've got. Here's the sales I have today. Here's what I want to do. And here's why I know, I'm going to start this electrical business and I've already got these 7 builders. Look at the letters. They're committed to using me. And they all say they're going to use 6. Gee, you have enough right here that's going to pay your debt. Well, then they've given me all the reason right on the front to say yes to them. Doesn't mean we always will.
Right.
But
right.
it says that they've thought it through. And it's not where, boy, I just got fired from my last job. I want to start a business. I don't know quite what it is.
Right.
Oh, you need stuff. You need a tax return. You know what I'm saying? Body language is everything.
Yeah.
Because I've had plenty of people sit in my chair saying, I have an attorney friend that says I shouldn't need to personally guarantee anything. That's for me. That's the deal kill. I will help them, and I tell them right there, say, hey, I'd love to look at your business plan. I can no longer be your banker because you've already said. Well, no, they always back off that, but you don't realize what that says. It just says that they're not confident enough to sign on their own deal.
Sure.
And they want the bank's not an equity player. The bank's a debtor.
Right.
And so we don't have, like the example I told you, the 400,000 that turned into 55 million. I didn't have a play for that. We just got paid a fixed rate of interest for taking the risk when it was the riskiest.
Right.
So, I don't have, I'm not in it for an ownership stake.
Sure.
So I didn't get half the cut when that business sold. So being a debtor, it just shows that you have to be really confident, show you've done your work, and not fear telling the banker the bad information.
Sure.
When somebody comes in and says, hey, I had a really hard time 4 years ago. I had a medical issue. I didn't pay bills for 5 months. Great. I tell me up front and don't hide from it, then I'm going to
Right.
immediately know to expect it, and I likely can probably work around it.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So I only need a napkin for Andy. That's all I need.
Just a napkin, well, and I say that we've actually had that happen. I just appreciate a well thought through napkin than 100 pages of fluff that they didn't write.
I love it. He's getting a napkin from me. He's getting a
Because
napkin.
we have had people come in with a business plan that they've never even looked at. They paid somebody to do it, and it really wasn't personal. That scares the crap out of me. I'd rather have that hard thought, little piece of paper than show up with the background there.
Makes sense. Yep. Okay, so I want to ask you a couple of questions here before we close out. So in the banking world today, like I don't know if you've had it. I'm sure. So when I say what I was going to say, I'm sure you haven't had a chance to look at this, but I saw an article this morning that SBA is changing some things. So in a nutshell, if somebody's listening to this, what are they changing? What are the pluses, the minuses to that?
Yeah, in fact, it's in my inbox. You would bring that up. I have not looked at it. I do know some of the changes are they're expanding their export programs. They're gonna start making it a little easier on some 7A programs.
Yep.
And expanding some limitations. Yeah. Because they really want to get money out.
That's what I gathered, Mark, is that it looks like it's gonna they're giving you guys as the banks doing the SBAs, they're giving you a little bit more flexibility is what it really is.
They're giving us a little flexibility on what that rate range, because rates let's be honest, 2023 was awful for interest rates.
Yeah.
Most people think banks love that. It's the opposite. Right. We don't mind steady increase or steady decrease. We can't have fast increase or fast decrease because it blows the formulas up. So you can't when you have rates go up 4% in 6 months' time, you don't have the ability for your loans to reprice. Like I can't call up all my fixed loans saying, "Hey, dude, it just raised 3 points. Can we change your loan rate?" Not the way it works.
So in that vein, before I kind of ask you a couple of closing questions, from your perspective as a banker, as a shareholder in a bank, as somebody who's very active politically, both locally and nationally, where do you see things going relative to the economy and just your perspective?
And I wish, again, we all know that if we all had that crystal ball, we'd all have millions.
I understand.
I do think this year you're going to see still some rate decreases. I think that's still been tempered a bit because inflation still remains an issue.
Right.
And I know it depends on who you talk to, and they say you could find 40% of the population to say it's not an issue, then 40% to say it's a huge issue, and then there's 20% in the middle. There's no question there's price inflation. When there's when a nugget meal in California costs you $27, there's something wrong. So
right.
And typically rate increases help bring down inflation. So that's why I think when you're not going to see this steadily decline in rates until that's in check a little better.
Right.
I do still think banks are healthy. By an industry rule, we don't have a lot of delinquencies today, so this is not like it was in 2010.
Right.
In 2010, the banks just had a ton of payment problems. Real estate, no question, that's you know that space as good as anybody. Values haven't changed much. I mean, have values come down a bit? You bet. But right now, if you have a $250,000 house you put on the market, you're going to sell it in 24 hours and probably 50 offers.
Pretty much.
Right now, there's a shortage of supply. In 2010, there was a gluttony of supply. It was the opposite. There was developments all over the place in various states and so that's what fueled a different world then. So I do still think we're going to have a situation where the economic conditions probably are favorable for people to still get money for sensible, well thought through, well capitalized projects. If somebody's coming to the bank door today with minimal cash and not much left, that's going to be a hard sell. Yeah. The banks, it's no different than anything else. If I have only one pen and it costs me 50 cents to make, and I've got 4 people willing to pay me $4 for it, and somebody else willing to pay $1, well, it's still profitable to buck, but I'm going to sell it to where there's 4. When there is a lower supply, which there is today, it's going to be more selective. Sure. And I'd argue that's actually better for the economy because there is more turning of probably more sensible projects. So I do still think banking's going to keep moving. You have to cash flow at a higher interest rate. I mean, that's the one thing I tell somebody walking in the door today too. Test your project on 10%. Even if you're not going to pay it, show the bank you can cover it
Yeah.
with 10%, whatever that looks like. It's
So I'm going to ask you for a final thought in a second, but I do want to. You and I have had conversations around this. Right now, banks are fighting for deposits, correct?
correct. But good. Not every bank.
No, not every bank. I get it,
And I'll
but
tell you, it's an interesting story. The banks that are fighting for deposits are the healthy banks, and I know that sounds.
that's my point. Yeah, yeah,
If banks are still active and lending and engaged in their community, they need money to fund that activity.
right.
So if a bank is choosing to sit back, not lend money, I don't need new deposits.
Right.
So, if you see a bank, hungry for deposits, don't look at that as being, they must be in trouble. It's the opposite. It's usually because they're engaged and healthy.
That's my whole point of bringing this up, because you and I have had these conversations, is people look at a bank for loans, but they don't necessarily understand the other side of that, which could benefit them, that there is a competitiveness out there in the marketplace for deposits. And you guys are certainly playing in that space because you're still lending at a very strong level. And so even if somebody is hearing this and is saying, hey, I don't need any loans right now, it certainly may behoove them to look at their current relationship in terms of what are they getting on a return on their $1 million that's running through that bank as a business owner. And so that's the only reason I brought that up.
And they should always call a bank. And I'll tell you what I said about 15 minutes ago. Even if you don't need to have loans today in your bailiwick, your deposits should still be at the bank that you're building a relationship and most likely to lend you money down the road.
Right.
I can tell you the approval rate on loans that people have deposits pre-existing in the bank is a lot higher than the other way around.
It makes sense.
And if you call that bank and talk to that bank, they'll usually customize the program. They're not going to give you a rate that's unheard of. If you have somebody giving you a rate that sounds too good to be true, there's usually strings and it's usually short-lived. If there is the opposite of having, maybe you get paid a quarter point or 30 basis points less.
Yep.
But that's human nature, right?
Thanks a lot.
I wasn't referring to you on that, but now I pick up where you're going.
I know. It's fun. It's all good. Okay. So Mr. Cove, before I ask you for your final thought, where and how would somebody get in touch with you if they wanted to, speak with you, obviously start a relationship building with you? How would they get in touch with you?
I've got all the technical things on the planet, but I love a phone call. I'm not this robot that's online. I can give you my email, but I'd say 651-430-8609 is my direct dial that rings to my cell phone. It rings to my office. And you know what? I just like to have a human conversation.
Yeah.
If people really want to send an email, then it's mcove, that's MCO, V as in Victor E, at myfrbank.com. But that's impersonal. Pick up the call. I'd love, I'm going to take time to talk to you. And if I am busy,
you call back. I know that. Okay. So give us a final thought on anywhere you want to go.
Final thought is remember as a community to support your local and small businesses. That's the engine that keeps things rolling. And I love when I see people band together and realize that we can all make a difference. That economic wheel, maybe the banker's part of it, maybe the consulting group's part of it, but to me, it's just, stick with people you can have a relationship with. Even if you think you can do a little better in this social media, app, online, phone world, you're never going to do better than somebody you can pick up a phone and have a conversation with.
Absolutely. Well, Mr. Cove, it truly was my honor to have you on today. You've obviously been on this journey with me as a business owner for 30 plus years, and I appreciate everything you've done. I appreciate what you shared today and what you'll continue to do and all the great things that you do. So thank you so much for being here today, my friend.
And Pat, thank you. Always my pleasure. Appreciate the friendship and business all throughout the years. And, again, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, everybody, for being here. Please don't hesitate to share anything and everything about our podcast, destinationbusinessfreedom.com, and it can be found in also all your social media platforms. Thanks so much. If you're an entrepreneur, remember this. We want to help you define that destination address. Go to www.themancuso.com and take that quick assessment and schedule a call with me. We'd love to talk with you. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining Destination Business Freedom with Pat Mancuso. May the insights and strategies shared guide you towards financial prosperity and personal freedom. Continue to navigate boldly. Until next time, keep transforming challenges into achievements. Farewell, and stay the course.